you choose chair.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for participating on our virtual meeting of Riverside County Habitat Conservation Agency Board of Directors. And I'm not sure if you saw it in the agenda, but last quarter when we met, everyone attended. So I think the virtual helped us at this time. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And before we begin, please be sure to silence your other communication devices. And during this meeting, all participants except the presenter and myself will be placed on mute. So will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? And who was it, Brian, that you said just got back from
One of our open space techs, Francisco Gonzalez, he didn't get back. He's still serving in Kuwait till probably January of this or next year. So,
right. Do we have any? I know, Brian, you are retired military, correct?
No, I've never served. I used to work at the Army base in Fort
Okay.
Irwin.
Do we have a retired military? Okay, Russ Brown from him. Would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance today? Make sure you get off
It
mute.
would be my honor. Everyone, please rise, place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Russ, for that. And Janice, will you please conduct our roll call?
Absolutely. When I call your jurisdiction, if you would please state your name. City of Corona. Hemet.
Russ Brown.
Lake Elsinore.
Steve Manos.
Menifee. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I'm hearing. Okay, let's try this again because somebody just popped in. City of Corona. City of Corona. Mr. Richens, can you hear me, sir?
Here.
Thank you,
Sorry.
thank you, thank you. City of Hemet.
Russ Brown here.
Lake Elsinore.
Steve Manos.
Menifee.
Lisa Sobek.
Moreno Valley.
Here, Dave Marquez.
Thank you. Murrieta. Paris.
Michael Vargas.
Riverside.
Steve Hemingway here.
Temecula.
Marianne Edwards.
Wildemar.
Joseph Morabito.
And County of Riverside. That concludes roll call and we have quorum.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to public comments. And thank you everyone for being here today. At this time, members of the public can address the board regarding any items listed on this agenda. Members of the public will have the opportunity to speak on agendized items at the time the item is called for discussion. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Whenever possible, lengthy testimony should be presented to the board in writing and only pertinent points presented orally. For guest speakers or public comments, please adhere to the speaker time limit of 3 minutes. Please treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect the public meeting process. Janice, are there any public comments at this time?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we'll move on. Under the consent calendar, item number 6, all items listed under the consent and policy calendar are considered to be routine and may be enacted by one motion. Prior to the motion to consider any action by the board, any public comments on any of the consent items will be heard. Does anyone wish to pull a consent item for discussion? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Hearing none. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the consent?
Temecula moves.
Moreno Valley second.
Thank you. And Janice, will you please take and conduct a roll call vote?
City of Corona.
Aye.
Hemet.
Yes.
Lake Elsinore.
Yes.
Menifee,
Aye.
Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta, Paris,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
Temecula,
Aye.
Wildemar,
Yes.
County. That concludes roll call vote for that item, and it passes unanimously.
Thank you, Janice. We'll move to item number 6, status update on the Stevens kangaroo rat discovery efforts. Brian Sherman, take it away.
Thank you, Chair, Member Sobek, and welcome to everybody. I'm glad to see a good turnout today. Recently in July 2021, RCHCA staff, as we mentioned, Madam Chair Sobek and Vice Chair Morabito met with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Sacramento office, our state office of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to discuss the status of the SKR downlisting and review the future needs of the recovery effort. We discussed basically the final rule and what it would mean and how it would impact RCHCA being downgraded from endangered to threatened. Our chair discussed all the accomplishments that we have conducted over the last 25 years, which included all the land acquisition that was completed. We have funding assurances and all the reserves to basically safeguard against future events and to promote future management and monitoring actions. We have developed an SKR translocation plan. So if any one reserve would kind of blink out of existence due to a disease or some random event, we have the ability to translocate SKR from one area to another to ensure populations continue into the future. And then finally, in 2020, we just conducted one of the largest things we've ever done in our history, and that was to complete the SKR range-wide management and monitoring plan, which will take us into the future and hopefully help recover the species and completely delist it. So with that being said, we also discussed the future needs, mostly funding, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Sacramento office asked us to look into Section 6 funding, which requires a state representative. So following the meeting, we came back, we reached out to our local CDFW office. They had a few questions. We answered those questions and we're waiting on their response. They need to be a partner with us on our application for Section 6 funding, which is basically a federal pass-through to the state. So the federal government allocates a certain amount for recovery of species. That gets conducted to the state office. CDFW then has to be a partner. This California Department of Fish and Wildlife has to be your partner with the application process. And so we're working with them. Hopefully we'll receive some Section 6 funding. In the meantime, we have received some funding from the BLM for other matters that we're going to apply, and I'll demonstrate that a little bit later and how that works to implement the range-wide management and monitoring plan. Other than that, the final downlisting rule is on schedule to be published in the Federal Register on by the end of this month. They did caveat that by saying last week when I checked in with them to make sure everything was on schedule that there is a backlog in the Federal Registry, but the final rule is the final rule. There's nothing that comes after that. We're just patiently waiting for it to be published in that Federal Register. We're developing a media release that will be basically put out there following the announcement in the publication in the Federal Register of the SKR downlisting. You'll see that hopefully in a lot of areas, newspapers, websites, that kind of thing. And we're also going to put out our sound bites to these meetings. We normally do it to you board members and to some other folks, but as Chair Sobek suggested, we should be sending this to Fish and Wildlife Service Sacramento, CDFW Sacramento, our legislative representatives in Congress. So we're going to blast it out a little bit of a larger footprint to really demonstrate our accomplishments and get a lot of regional support behind what we're doing. So it's a great suggestion. So in summary, to conclude this item, which is a receive and file, everything is on track for the downlisting and we anticipate its announcement shortly. We do have a follow-up meeting scheduled with Sacramento U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service folks on October 21st, in which our chair and vice chair and staff will also be attending to discuss future needs for the species. I'll be happy to entertain any questions at this time.
Thank you, Brian. Does anyone have any questions for Brian?
Not a question, just a comment.
Go ahead, Marianne.
This is a milestone and it's remarkable. I hope everybody understands what a huge accomplishment this is, and it's taken years to come to fruition. So my kudos for everyone that has worked on this project. This just doesn't happen. It's just so very rare. So that speaks to a number of things. The first of which is that, the program has been managed so well and the relocation effort has worked so spectacularly that not only are we able to compensate for Riverside County's kangaroo rat population, but we qualified for this effort without even considering North San Diego County. So it's an amazing accomplishment. And, I would make the suggestion that we use this as a tool to apply for any recognition or federal awards or, state awards or environmental awards, because people need to know about this. It's really, I think it's a model plan, and I think Fish and Wildlife believes that too. So congratulations, everybody that got to go to Sacramento and is going to go again. That's a great trip to make. And just thank you all for your very, very hard work. It's an amazing accomplishment.
We appreciate that, Marianne. And I should say that too, that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service stated that we're the crown jewel of HCPs. So we thought that was very complimentary.
Yeah, that's what I knew that.
So we're appreciative of your comments. We're appreciative of their comments. It is a lot of hard work. And I should have probably explained a little bit of what this means is from going to endangered to threatened. And maybe I should go into more detail at the next meeting. But under Section 9 of the Endangered Species Act, all things endangered are considered the same way. It's fully protected. And so if you want to do anything outside of an HCP towards recovery, say this translocation plan that we've developed, that would require this U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do a NEPA EIR level kind of analysis. They would have to do permitting. There would be a lot of bureaucracy involved just to do something that we know would help the species. With the threatened status, they can do what's called a 4D ruling, and they can make special authorizations that tailor towards species recovery without having to go through the whole paperwork permitting process. So it really should speed up any recovery efforts now that it's downlisted to threatened. So we're hopeful. It took us 25 years to basically get to this point, but we should be able to go from threatened to full recovery in a much shorter amount of time, because it really does expedite any kind of recovery actions. So we're appreciative of your comments, and hopefully U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service continues to recognize that, and I think they have.
Well, I want to reiterate, we need to apply for any kind of awards or recognition we can get, and maybe we need to bottle this and sell it.
So yeah, Marianne, you just made some really great comments. And before I make my comment, I just want to ask, does anyone else have any comments on this item 6A?
Board Member Vargas, City of Paris.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been here 5 years and this has been going on even a lot longer. We did get plenty of kudos, but it's even the bigger thing too, Marion, is to realize, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but we are the first in Southern California to even have a down listing. That is the major kudos, and that's what needs to be emphasized, is that not just did we do this, we are the first to do this. So that is big stuff. So again, Brian and Janice and all your I'm saying Janice and I'm looking at Princess on her picture. Heather, for your staff, again, for tremendous work, and looking forward to finally officially seeing this downlisting come through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Vargas. Any other comments? So I would just like to say to the closing comment here, Brian, it was a great meeting, and I loved, Marianne, all the things that you said. And Mayor Vargas, him and I, we did go to Washington, D.C. with Princess and with Greg Bishop. And now to see this, and we met with Fish and Wildlife, and we met with legislators, and now to see this come to fruition, and knowing all the people and all the board members and staff members who went before us to help this happen, it's a huge accomplishment, a big milestone, like you said, Marianne. And that's why I asked that we now share this information, not just with board members, but with all of our legislative leaders and others around to share this information of this great effort. And so this recovery effort, this has been huge. And thank you, Brian, for your remarks and your report. And
Madam Chair, may I ask a question now? I thought of a question.
okay,
So if staff could prepare for all the board members, either a really short, maybe 1 or 2 slides of a PowerPoint, and then maybe just the talking points, because I'm going to make sure that I talk about this at my next council meeting. And it would be great if we were all on the same page. So we didn't leave anything out. And thank you, Mayor Vargas. I forgot to mention the fact that we were the first. And that too is just incredible. So I'd love to have a couple of slides, even just a picture of the kangaroo rat or, whatever. And then just the talking points that I can present at my next council meeting. And I'm sure others would too.
Mayor, this is Janice Leonard. In our sound bites that we produce after the meeting, we also include a hyperlink to the entire PowerPoint. Would that be sufficient?
Oh, sure. Then I can just, I'll just pull out a couple of slides from that.
Okay, perfect.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
and Marianne, that is just a great idea, because I report out too at my city council meetings with pictures. And this is something I would ask every board member who belongs to this group to make sure you do share this information, because this is really huge.
These are bragging rights, level, really.
Yeah. So great discussion, great presentation, good news. We like
Thanks,
to hear.
everyone.
Yeah. So we're going to go on now to item B, and we're going to go to the SKR Reserve Management Monitoring Efforts. And this is going to be presented by Harry Sandoval. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Harry.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going to give a brief discussion on our reserve management and monitoring. And to start off here, we've prepared a quick, I think it's about a 2.5-minute video. And this just kind of provides an overview of the management and monitoring that we do here at Lake Matthews.
Managing and monitoring of the Stevens kangaroo rat is a complex process that RCHCA staff carries out in different stages throughout the year. During the spring and fall of each year, countless hours go into land management activities. SKR have very specific habitat requirements that requires lots of effort on our part to achieve. RCHCA staff use a combination of grazing, mowing, prescribed burning, and herbicide treatments to achieve ideal conditions for SKR. Once the summer comes around, management activities are usually done and the focus changes to monitoring activities. Natural Resources Manager, Harry Sandoval, is processing a captured SKR during a June monitoring session at the Lake Matthews, STEELE Mountain Reserve. He weighs the K-rat before removing it from the bag. Monitoring helps gauge SKR population density and health within a given reserve. Examining SKR populations by monitoring is a component of the adaptive management method that helps land managers determine the effectiveness of habitat management activities. Reserves are monitored on a rotating basis, with each reserve being monitored approximately every 3 years. When monitoring SKR, special attention is made to ensure the survey is conducted during the highest probability of detecting these rare animals by accounting for the lunar cycle, nighttime low temperatures, and geographic features, among other variables. RCHCA permitted biologists measure captured SKR for weight, ear length, sex, age class, and reproductive status. Next, Harry is ventrally marking the SKR with a permanent marker, so biologists can identify whether it's a new capture or recapture on later trap checks. Traps are set at dusk and then left open for 4 hours, checked, rebaited, and left open for another 4 hours before a final trap check and closure around dawn. Now he's checking for the species sex and reproductive status. Adult animals were the majority of captures during this survey. Finally, Harry measures its ear before releasing it. A total of 92 unique SKR were captured during this survey at the Lake Matthews, STEELE Mountain Reserve, an increase of 38% since the area was last monitored in 2017. During the monitoring session carried out in June, a record number of SKR were found within areas managed by RCHCA at the Lake Matthews, STEELE Mountain Reserve. The record high number of SKR found are an indicator of a healthy population and are also a testament to the positive management activities carried out within the reserve.
Great. Great video.
Great, thank you. So as was indicated in the video, we've been busy during the summer. We do the management activities through the fall and spring. Essentially in the summer, we change over to doing the monitoring. I'm going to go over a little bit of the data that we recovered from this current monitoring session here. So our last monitoring sessions were done here at Lake Matthews. Lake Matthews ownership is split between various agencies, including the RCHCA and the Metropolitan Water District of California, Southern California. So this year we were able to do both our transects, our grids, as well as MWDs. On the next slide here, we'll see that we're starting to see trends over time here. We've been, as the video indicated, we try to monitor all the reserves on a kind of rotating basis every 3 years. And now we're starting to see trends in the SKR population where we monitor. And what was interesting this year is now we're starting to see the payoff of all the management activities that we're doing. These graphs hopefully are not too confusing, but I'll kind of just go over some of the things that we're seeing here in the numbers. And what we've found is that the kangaroo rat populations are really responding in a favorable fashion where management is occurring. Just an example here, if we look at the table or the graph on the left-hand side here, we could see that the kangaroo rats need habitat that is about 50% covered with vegetation and about 50% dirt. And you can see where those the numbers are just about equal, or where those graphs of those bars are just about equal. You can see that the number of kangaroo rats, the blue lines there, get higher. And you can see where conditions are not the greatest, where there's a disbalance in something, you can see the kangaroo rat populations are lower. If we look over on the graph on the right, you could see kind of an extreme case of that. You could see a great variation in management and a great variation in kangaroo rat density as well. And a rationale for that is we've recently, well, in the last 5 years or so, we've taken over management of the entire Lake Matthews Reserve under contract from the Metropolitan Water District. And we're now starting to see essentially the fruits of the labor there, where you see that particularly grid 10, you could see that vegetation previously was extremely high. And after management, grid 10 is in an area that we have done some prescribed burning and some restoration in. And you could see that the kangaroo rat population really responded favorably in that case. So this is kind of the cycle that we do. We manage, we go out and monitor. It gives us not only a snapshot of what the kangaroo rat population is doing, but we could also make sure that our management efforts are going in the right direction as well. Next slide, please. And now this is the flip side. This is what happens when you don't have a really robust management system in place. This is data from the Lake Paris Reserve. And I forgot to mention, at the Lake Matthews Reserve, we had an increase of about 38% in the kangaroo rat population over the last few years. Now, the flip side to this is the data that we recovered from the 2020 monitoring in Lake Paris, where we encountered a drop of 43% in the kangaroo rat population. If you look at those graphs, you can see that the first light green there is the vegetation. And you can see that the vegetation has greatly increased from the previous monitoring session. If you look on the right side of that graph, the SKR abundance, you'll see that we captured a lot less animals, and we could directly correlate that to the vegetation essentially getting out of control. And that's just due to a lack of management, essentially. Next slide, please. So apart from the SKR management, we are also doing some other kinds of wildlife monitoring. So these are some new arrays that we've placed around Lake Matthews. This is a kind of a new innovative way of monitoring for terrestrial species around here. In the past, arrays like this have been used. However, this is kind of innovative in that it uses a motion activated camera. Previously, we would have to put out pitfall traps, which would just be holes in the ground essentially lined with a bucket. Animals would fall in. A biologist would have to go out and check that bucket every day essentially to make sure that there is no loss of life or anything from the species being surveyed. In this particular case, we use a motion activated camera. We only have to check it once a week pretty much just to make sure that we have enough batteries in the camera and that our memory cards aren't full. So it's a really nice way of gathering data passively. It's really cost efficient. It's a lot safer for the animals that we're working with out here as well. So we have 6 of those spread out within the Lake Matthews Reserve currently. As those kind of expire, as we let those go, we'll start moving those around and try to monitor more of the lands out here as well. Next slide, please. So other management activities that we do, the RCHCA has 8 parcels throughout Western Riverside County. I believe that accounts for about 330 acres. And these parcels are considered surplus lands. They're not part of the SKR reserve system. Every once in a while, we have to carry out inspections just to make sure that our lands are still there and in decent shape. This year, we identified a few issues that were of concern. On one of these properties, we found a unpermitted cannabis operation. Another was illegal grading and dumping. And finally, we found the development of a residential structure. Now that residential structure has been there for a while, and why we were able to discover it now is that we now have kind of a dedicated kind of GIS program going on within the agency, something that we lacked when the agency was with the county. So we were able to see a lot more data being processed, and we're finding a lot more issues such as this. Next slide, please. So this is an image of a property, one of the surplus parcels that we have just outside of the city of Hemet. And if you look at that image on the left-hand side there, you can see that our parcel is the one that's bordered in that teal line. And if you look at the very top left corner of that, you'll see that's a residence essentially is within the parcel. We did have a Riverside County Transportation Department survey agency go out and do an official survey of the property. And they were able to confirm that, yes, somebody indeed has built their house, a portion of their garage as well within the RCHCA's parcel there. And if we move over a little bit to the right, you could also see that another neighbor has installed kind of a structure there. It's a permanent structure. It's a stable, I believe it is. There is also, they've planted an orchard, and the picture on the right-hand side is essentially a ground level view of what we're looking at on that map on the left there. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we did have the survey department out on a few of these cases to determine if we indeed did have an issue or if we had maybe just a mapping error on our part, but indeed it turned out that at least 3 of these locations, well, all 3 of these locations are RCHCA parcels. There is a problem that exists. Some of these are, I shouldn't say easy fixes, but somewhat simple fixes, as in the case of the cannabis operation. We simply referred that to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Cannabis Eradication Team, and they're able to easily take care of that. Some of these problems are going to be more complex, such as the one with a residence built upon our parcel. With that being said, we have come to the determination that in order to be fair and determine what logical processes need to take place, we are developing an encroachment policy that we're going to bring to the board in the future And that encroachment policy will essentially provide the guidelines as to how we deal with these situations that are going to be more complex and likely controversial. I believe that is it on my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions about monitoring or anything else I spoke of today.
Thank you, Harry. Just a minute, please, Mayor. Let me just ask, has any public joined us at this time? And is there any questions or comments from public?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I do see that Dr. Lisa DeForest from Marietta has joined us, and I don't know if anyone else has. So welcome, Lisa. And now we'll go to Mary Ann Edwards, Mayor.
Thank you. So what implications does the downlisting have on development fees or fee collection? How does that impact the fees that have been paid for all these years? Because I've paid my share of fees, I'll tell you. So what implications does this have?
Mary Ann, this is Brian. I can answer that problem
Okay.
the best. And for all practical purposes, it has no implication on the fees. Your fees were greatly appreciated and contributed to the current downlisting and the recovery actions thus far, and primarily assembling the core reserves. And so in setting up the endowments on those reserves. In the future, if we can recover the species, that's when the real implications come for the fee. You could probably eliminate the fee in some sense if it was fully recovered. That being said, management on these lands will have to occur in perpetuity, and some funding source will probably be required. I mean, considering the RCA is adding hundreds of thousands of acres to Western Riverside, and the existing 46,000 acres of RCHCA SKRHCP land, at some point, some kind of funding mechanism will have to be required to manage those things in perpetuity.
So thank you, Brian. So the good news is the fees remain as is while we're kind of in the holding or the maintenance phase. So the good news is the fees remain, and the bad news is the fees remain. So right, great for RCHCA, because we have to do it. And as you said, we have to find a funding source one way or the other.
And
so this is better.
If there's any bright news, the fee when it was first implemented was $1,250 per acre, and it's down to $500 an acre. And it hasn't been adjusted for inflation since 15 years from now. So I mean, the fee is what the fee is, and it covers all our operations, and it provides for recovery. But for the long-term management and monitoring of the species with this new SKR implementation, this range-wide implementation plan, we have to continue to find grant funding. And we'll talk about that in a little bit further presentation. But yeah, the fees are adequate for the current level of management and monitoring.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from any of the board members? Okay, hearing none, I do have one question.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Director Brown has his hand raised.
Oh, there you go. Thank you for that, Janice.
Yeah, thank you. I know that you mentioned that we're going to be reviewing some policy in dealing with the encroachment. So looking at the example that you provided where a residential structure is partially encroaching, just to get some sense of where the policy direction might be headed, are you talking about negotiating, using this one as an example, negotiating with the property owner? Because I can only suspect that there was some surveying done before that structure was permitted and built. So we're talking about perhaps negotiating some settlement where there's an agreement reached and we redraw the boundary lines of our parcel to be compatible with their parcel?
Yes, these parcels, we're lucky in that these parcels are not part of the SKR reserve system. So they're not of ecological great, as ecological great value as if it were in the reserve. So technically these lands are surplus. We could probably find a amicable solution to this issue.
Just to put a finer point on that, for some of the new members, back in the day when the SKR HCP was first implemented, the idea that the RCHCA was to basically buy all the land they needed and consolidate it at Lake Matthews Reserve. And then they were supposed to sell these parcels, these excess parcels that were BLM or however they acquired them, to make money to then further the acquisition of property around Lake Matthews. So they were always intended to be sold. For one reason or another, we just have hung on to them over the years. That being said, I don't think in any way the RCHCA is intending to make somebody, remove their house or their garage or whatnot. We'll find an amicable way to resolve the situation. And like you suggested, maybe we do a lot line adjustment or we do some other way to make it right. We aren't sure, and maybe Harry has more detail on it, whether the house was there before the RCHCA acquired the property, or was the RCHCA acquired the property and then the house was built. Either way, like you said, there's probably a survey error that happened at some point in time. And we will figure out a way to basically come to an amicable resolve with the property owner to make sure that everybody's safeguarded. It doesn't add to SKR. We don't need this land to reach our 15,000 acres of occupied SKR, which we're required to have under the SKR-HCP. So it is surplus. Theoretically, we could sell him the whole parcel if we wanted to, if he was willing to buy it, but we'll figure out a way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, that took care of my question. Janice, is there anyone else wanting to speak on this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Harry. Great report. We'll move on to item C, and this will be presented by Brian Schumer with a status update on the various tasks associated with the RCHC tracted land management activities. So, Brian.
Brian, you're muted.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Item 6C is just an update on some of the revenue we bring in from our contracted land management. And so the first item you'll see is the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Land Management. A few years ago, they gave us a pretty good contract for $600,000. That's what we used for various land management. It was about 2 years ago. And so one of the tasks under that item was to basically develop that SKR range-wide management and monitoring plan that we keep talking about. Along with that first year of funding, they gave us 4 additional option years that they could purchase from the RCHCA for future land management. Last year, they exercised their option, and we received about $190,000 worth of revenue, and that's where some of the monitoring that occurred this year, we were able to build the BLM for, and that's the $190,000 you see there. I have recently received, as of yesterday, I got a phone call from BLM. They're going to basically purchase the third option, or the third year, which is option year 2, which should give us another $190,000 by the end of this fiscal year. So that'll basically fund the first 2 years of implementing the range-wide management and monitoring plan going forward. And we'll discuss that a little bit further down too. Another little contract, we often do small projects for the El Sobrante landfill folks here in the Temescal Valley, do a lot of biological work, a lot of riparian restoration work. They came back to us and gave us another about $18,000 for doing some riparian restoration, which they're required to do as part of the landfill's expansion. They hit some creeks and stream beds and stuff like that. And there's 1,600 permits through the state and 404 permits through the Army Corps of Engineers require no net loss of wetlands. So they have to restore some degraded areas. And they've been unsuccessful in the past. We've been pretty good about it. So they decided to basically hire the RCHCA to do that, as well as some small mammal and reptile surveys. Finally, one of our bread and butter contracts that we have every year is, as Harry mentioned, the management of Metropolitan Water District land here at Lake Matthews. We received about $109,000 worth of revenue last fiscal year. We have renewed that contract going forward this fiscal year. And depending on how many task orders they apply, for us to do, depends on the revenue amount. Last year, we had budgeted for about $150,000, but due to the no precipitation, some of the management task orders that they requested were never performed. And so we didn't realize the full revenue of that contract, but we still managed to get $109,000. This year, we anticipate about $150,000 again. If we get some rain, we'll pretty much realize that full amount. So that's just a quick update. Be happy to entertain any questions. It's a receive and file.
Thank you, Mr. Schumer. Any public members?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Does any board members have any questions or comments? Hearing none, seeing no hands raised, this is another receive and file. So thank you, Brian, very much. We'll move to item D. Item D is presented again by Brian with an approval request for an agreement between the RCHCA and Conservation Biology Institute for implementation of the range-wide SKR management monitoring plan. This is something we've been looking forward to. So Brian. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I keep going back and forth. Just a real quick update for maybe some of the members that haven't attended some recent meetings. As I said, 2 years ago, the RCHCA was contracted by the BLM for about $600,000 worth of actions. One of those items under that contract was to develop a range-wide management and monitoring plan for SKR. A lot of this is built on actions that the RCHCA has established in the past, including the habitat suitability model, which basically is a range-wide mapping effort conducted using aerial imagery to identify areas on the ground that are suitable for SKR. So once we identify those areas on the ground that are suitable for SKR, we have to really kind of focus on, are they actually there? And if they are there, what are their numbers? And in order to do that, then we can come up with what we call an effective population size. And then so Fish and Wildlife Service can make a listing determination in the future once we know that. So fast forward to 2020, we worked over the course of years, and in 2020, we finalized it. I should say the spring of 2021, we adopted it and finalized it. And so the next thing to do is to implement this range-wide management and monitoring plan. We basically collaborated with a whole bunch of scientists, species managers, researchers, pretty much 30 different entities to come up with how to implement this thing and how we better understand region-wide SKR populations, the trends over time. You heard Terry previously speak about Lake Matthews, how we can start identifying trends after about 10 years or so. We start seeing some data. We need to do that over the range of SKR. And we have to prioritize our conservation strategies. So this was all done in that implementation plan. This next agreement that we have before you to decide today will basically allow for the facilitation of the data management strategy. So where do we store all this data that's going to be coming in? There's going to be a lot of monitoring data from San Diego, from Riverside County, all needs to be funneled into one place. We have to implement this through basically through 1 through 5 years of the plan, the data management and the maintenance for 2 years. The total cost of this agreement, if all the option years are exercised, is about 1.1 million. So the first 2 years are almost half that. So you have a little bit of upfront money, and that's where we receive the BLM's funding. And so we're going to use that towards there. The RCHCA will probably kick in a little bit towards that. But the majority of the first 2 years, we will continue to seek, other funding sources, and that's where that Section 6 funding comes in that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Sacramento folks talked about. We'll do everything we can to minimize the cost to the RCHCA, since this is a regional and it is a collaborative effort. The RCHCA will take on the burden of seeking this funding and applying for this funding, as we have conducted in the past. But you'll see the contract is basically for 5 years. And so the total amount is $1,085,000. Next slide. So item 6D, we're requesting that you approve the professional service agreement between RCHCA and CBI for the implementation of range-wide management and monitoring plan for Stevens Kangaroo Rat. We request that you authorize the general manager to execute and administer the terms of that agreement. And finally, we authorize the executive director to execute any future amendments, those option years, in other words, to the agreements, if necessary. So as long as those amendments do not result in an overall monetary increase, and as long as those amendments are approved to form by our legal counsel. I'll be happy to entertain any questions or explain anything in further detail.
Brian, when we go forward with the motion, can they all three be taken in one motion? Or do they need to be separate?
I'll defer to Aaron.
They can all be taken in one motion.
Thank you, Aaron.
Sure.
So thank you, Brian. Do we have any public questions or comments?
I see no requests.
Thank you. And do we have any board members who want to have any questions or make any comments at this time?
Move to approve all three items, City Affairs.
Emmett, second.
Janice, do you need to take a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. City of Corona,
Aye.
Hemet,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee,
Yes.
Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes.
Paris,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
Temecula,
Yes.
Wildemar,
Yes.
and County. That concludes roll call vote for that item, and it passes unanimously.
Thank you, Janice. This will be great. I'm looking forward to this, Brian. So thank you so much.
Well, I thank you guys. It'll be put to good use and hopefully it'll go a long way towards recovering that species.
Thank you. So we're on item E, and this is our Still Peak Access Plan update. This will be presented by Rihanna Fisher. So Rihanna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I'm Rihanna Fisher, the Program Manager for RCHCA, and I'm presenting item 6E, an update on the Steel Peak Public Access Plan. Just to recap for those board members that haven't attended our recent meetings, we are installing a low-impact walking trail at our Steel Peak Reserve in unincorporated Riverside County. This will provide a much-needed recreational source for the area, which does not have one within a 7-mile radius. So it is very exciting. And just to give you an update, so with the design plan of the Steel Peak Inaugural Trail finalized, RCHCA has now completed our CEQA evaluation with Ruth Villalobos and Associates, and is currently working on finalizing the document to incorporate feedback from staff and our legal counsel. Once the document is finalized, it will be sent out for public review and comment for a period of 30 days. The CEQA document will then be presented at our November board meeting for final approval before beginning pre-construction surveys required of CEQA. Those surveys are anticipated January through March 2022. And it is anticipated that construction on the trail can begin in late May 2022, which should approximately take about 2 months. And staff will be sure to provide quarterly updates on its progress and anticipated opening date as well. And that concludes my report on item 6E, an update on the Steel Peak Public Access Plan. And this is a receive and file. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rihanna. This is another exciting thing that RCHC is doing. At this time, do we have any questions or comments from our public? Hearing none, we'll move to board members. Any questions or comments from any of the board members?
Chair Moreno Valley.
Hey, Moreno Valley, and after you, Joseph from Wildemar.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Question on these public access routes that we do. Is that only for foot traffic, or are they open to bikes? I know it's not for ATVs, but bike routes also are going to be allowed on these trails?
No, this is a dirt trail, so it is just a walking trail at the moment. We're actually enclosing a fence line and the trail to keep out like ATVs and unauthorized access. So that's why we are keeping it to walking trail.
And there'll be times that are open and closed on these trails?
It will be open from dusk till dawn, and we actually will have a reserve patrol the entire time there during operating hours, also to keep down illegal access.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead, Joseph. Oh, you're on mute.
There we are. Okay. So yeah, so we talked about no bicycles. How about with horses?
No horses as well.
Okay. So then my question I had during your presentation, you mentioned no other such facility like this. Did you say 7-mile radius?
Yes.
So what's the nearest one like that? I'm guessing there might be one within 8 miles.
I'm not sure.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was a cutoff or not. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the nearest one is. But we did some statistics before, and we did find nothing within 7 miles. So.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Good questions. All right, hearing none. Thank you, Brianna. This is a receive and file. And I see that you're on also for item F, letter F. So Brianna, financial analysis of fiscal year 2021.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello again. So I'm just presenting on a financial review of our fiscal year 2021. So our RCHCA's budget consists of two parts, the general operations and Lake Matthews Reserve operations. At the start of fiscal year 2021, RCHCA presented a conservative based budget due to unknown effects that COVID-19 might have on the agency. June 30th closed out our fiscal year 2021, and the total revenue collected through June 30th was a total of 1.8 million against total expenditures of 1.5 million. Revenue sources consisted of SKR mitigation fee collections, revenue from contracts, and small percentage from interest. Due to COVID-19, RCHCA anticipated a reduction in development projects and therefore SKR mitigation fee collections. However, projects seem to be unaffected by the pandemic. The total mitigation fee revenue collected for fiscal year 2021 was a total of 1,178,000. RCHCA collected a total of 654,000 in revenues for contracted services and a total of $12,895 in interest. That concludes my report on item 6F, which is a financial review of our fiscal year 2021. I'm happy to answer any questions. This is also a receive and file.
Thank you, Rihanna. So you were saying that you didn't, RCHC didn't, we had expected lower income, but I will say, reading over the numbers, that the city of Menifee's kept your numbers good. I think we 116,000 or 116,000 fees that we paid into the plan. So if anybody doesn't know it, our city, we did not slow down during the pandemic. It's just been crazy. So
it was surprising that a lot of development projects continued. So.
Yes, develop continues. So that's a good thing. So any questions or comments from public?
No, ma'am.
Okay, hearing none. How about staff? I mean, our members, board members, anyone would like
Lisa, we were right behind you on that too. We never slow down.
You never slow down either. That's great, David. I don't see any hands up, so we'll move on. Thank you again. And as Rihanna said, that was a receive and file. Now we're on to item 7, and I don't think the rest of you, besides Joseph and I, have met Dr. Kurt Wilson, the new director of WRCOG. And so we're glad to have him today. And I hope you'll take a moment and introduce yourself and share a little bit of information with us.
Certainly. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. As I'm looking around, I guess I have met a fair number of you, but my name is Kurt Wilson, and I'm new to WRCOG in the last, since the end of June. So I've been working my way around, figuring out a few things, and am very happy to be here. Most of my time has been as a city manager, different parts of the state. And I also did some time with the Schwarzenegger administration as well. So I spent some state time as well to work on some public safety things. And other than that, most of my time has been as a city manager, but I did begin my public service career on the other side of the fence when I was elected to the city council in Rialto, just over on the other side of the freeway there. So happy to be here, happy to be involved in the same group. So I just have 2 items for you. The first is really just an observation that from the outside, it's very impressive to see the downlisting, how rare that is. And you look at it and you say, wow, that never happens. They must have some special thing that nobody else has. The observation has been that it's been the staff. I mean, this has been a remarkably passionate group. So, there are folks who sort of come to work every day just because they, sort of clock in and clock out. But your small but mighty RCHCA staff is here because they want to be here. They've demonstrated a passion that I think is exactly the reason you're seeing the progress that you're seeing on that piece. And then the other part is really just a heads up, not an immediate action, but at some points in the sort of midterm. One of the things I would like to spend some time with this group to really work through is really sort of the financial underpinnings of the organization. So we have this great work that's being done by the staff, and it's being funded by almost exclusively by these fees that come with development. Today, as some of you have referenced, you did not slow down during the pandemic. You know, you're going gangbusters. Things are fantastic. You're doing all these wonderful things. But I do want to make sure at some point we take some time to do a little bit of forecasting and sort of model what that may look like in the future. Because one day we're not going to be developing at exactly that same pace. But we're still going to have the same obligations. We're still going to have the same things that staff needs to get done that we're going to have to pay for. So I think it's worth doing some modeling and having some conversations to make sure that we are in a place that's going to be sustainable for the long term. And that will conclude my report. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Kurt Wilson, for that and for your suggestion and comment. I agree with you on item number 1, that we have a very passionate staff. I was very impressed when I came on as a board member, and Princess is no longer in here, but Princess and Brian both that I got to know, and then now Harry and Brianna, the passion that they have for this work, it's been a great benefit, and it has helped make us the crown jewel that we are, that we heard Fish and Wildlife share with us. So would anybody like to make a comment to Kurt Wilson at this time on any of
Moreno Valley?
Moreno Valley? Okay, David.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Welcome aboard, Dr. Wilson. Real quick with my background, this was all new to me 5 years ago. But with this staff that we have on, I've learned quite a bit. And I'm proud to say that I'm a member of the RCHCA committee, board of directors, and hopefully I can stay on for another 3 years, make it 8 years total. But believe me, this staff that we have and the former staff has, I've learned quite a bit from them. And I just got to say thank you for the staff and the former staff, and welcome aboard.
Thank you, David. Do I see any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, future agenda items. Are there any requests for items on the future agenda?
Lisa?
Yes, David.
Do we see anything in the near future on another driving out there in the like we did the last several years ago on the poppies, where you have a couple of members go out and drive around out there and show us? Do we have anything for that in the near future?
Would that be Brian?
I can speak to that. I can speak to that. We can, anytime you guys want to go out, we can take you out. It's cooling off now. It's a perfect time to go out. I can't guarantee a good poppy show unless I can do my rain dance, but I can show you, some very interesting areas that you often don't get to see, and we can explore SKR habitat as well as other just beautiful areas within our reserve system. So anytime you guys want to get a hold of me directly or any of the RCHCA staff, we'll set it up and we'll take you for a tour.
Yeah,
as much as, go ahead, David.
Oh, yeah, just Lake Matthews reserves out there. That's one very interesting. I've had a lot of comments about Lake Matthews, and not knowing too much about that reserve, I maybe take a tour out there. At least I know what to talk about when people ask me about it.
Yeah, the reservoir itself is something that most folks in the public haven't seen in their lifetime. It's been off limits since it was built. It has almost a 1 mile inlet channel. It looks like whitewater rapids into a lake that has a beautiful shoreline, bald eagles nesting there. And then as you go south of there, you got the Paris Plain into some very steep canyon type areas. So, if you want to see the whole thing, budget a couple hours. If you just want to see, you only have an hour or two, we can show you a really good tour in relatively quick amount of time.
And I think there's other members that like to do that, so I appreciate that.
Yep.
And just let me know when you're ready to do those tours. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, sir. Anytime. You
Thank
get
you,
a hold of us with your schedule, at your convenience. We'll make sure it happens.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Good suggestion. I'm wondering if, Brian, we might be able to schedule something for in the spring when the wildflowers are blooming, and if there is rain, the poppies. It was just, when I went out with you, it was a wonderful experience. If we plan it a little ways out to where we can schedule that, that might be nice for the board members.
Certainly, and we can mention it in February. And the best time usually is around, if we're going to get flowers, the March-ish time, right after the February board meeting. The flowers are just popping out, but by March, April, they're in full display. So we'll set something up, and I'll put it on my list to bring up during the February meeting to schedule something. And that by that time, we should know if it's going to be a good flower year or not. So perfect.
Great. Also, do we need to schedule a future agenda item on what Kurt brought up about having a conversation about the future obligation and forecasting of the fees and financials? Do we need to add that?
I'll defer to Kurt, whatever he.
Yeah, either way would be fine. I would say you wouldn't need to do it at this point just because it's something that it's not immediate. I think there's some background work we'll need to do on our end first. But if you choose to, that's fine. Either way works for me.
Maybe we can just look at it next year, not February, but maybe the middle or this time of year next year, if that gives you enough time to look at that forecasting, but something to keep on our radar. Okay, any other comments? Okay, we're going to go to, let's see, number 9. Okay, everybody, this is your opportunity. General announcements. Who wants to say something? What's going on in your city or something to do with SKR?
Moreno Valley.
Okay.
We're having we're going to have some closures on the 60 freeway through Moreno Valley in the very, very near future. I just want to put it out there. Our overpass, Moreno Beach Drive overpass, will be torn down. It's going to be raised up and widened. So this is going to be a little over a year project. So if you're driving through the city of Moreno Valley, going to Palm Springs, or you're coming from Palm Springs, we're going to have nightly detours. So just be aware of that. To be cautious, a lot of the detours will be going through residential areas. So just to let you know that it's going to be a major project for us, and of course for the 60 freeway. So I just want to let everybody know that. If you can pass that information along, really appreciate it. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, David. And Joseph from Wildemar.
All right, if we're going to do announcements, we have mariachi night this Saturday at Martin O'Brien Park in Wildemar. And the cost is nothing. Just drive over and enjoy the evening. And then since we won't be meeting before October 16th, there's a Rooted in Nature Brew Fest put on by those at Santa Rosa Plateau. And that's who benefits that. So that's a fun event in our town. So those are things to look out for in Wildemar.
Thank you. Any other city? Okay, I just would like to announce that the city of Menifee will be having their State of the City. Just like to invite all of you, October 21st, 8:30 to 11 at our new Fairfield Inn and Suite Hotel. If you'd like to be invited, haven't been, let me know. Also, I didn't mention this and forgot, on Harry Sandoval's video that he made, is that something that could be shared with Fish and Wildlife when we meet with them again, or even put out, given to us as cities to be able to share?
Yes, we can arrange it. And I would also like to say that Rihanna, she put most of it together. So she deserves a lot of the credit for the Harry supplied the content, but Rihanna did a lot of the work to make that happen, and the voiceovers and everything. So tremendous staff that we have that are multifaceted, it's incredible. So yeah, we can make that happen. And it certainly can be distributed.
All right, great. And then Brian, I know that you have an announcement that you might like to make here at the end.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a real quick announcement. I'd like to introduce, I don't know if they all have cameras on their computer, but we hired 2 new staff members, open space habitat techs. One of our techs left for another career. We first got Colin Stratz, who came to us from the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District. He has a bachelor's degree. He has a qualified applicator certificate. He's a multifaceted person as well. Colin, do you want to say any few words?
Hey, good afternoon to the board of directors and to others on the call. Just want to say thank you for allowing me to attend this meeting. It's been informative, and it's nice to meet you all virtually nonetheless. I'm just, as Brian was mentioning, I came here over from Inland Empire Resource Conservation District. I have some experience with some land management and some habitat restoration projects in the past, and kind of have worked in various states across the country doing conservation work for different agencies, federal and state. I'm excited to be at this location and kind of learn from Brian and Harry and Rihanna as well. And we're looking forward to this upcoming season with some rainfall and to see everything kind of actually start to bloom and come back to life. So once again, nice to meet you all and look forward to future meetings.
Thank you, Colin. And then the next one, we just recently hired about, I think 2 weeks ago, is Angelina Cabral. She comes to us from U.S. Forest Service, who worked up in the Cleveland National Forest right here in the Temescal Valley. So Angelina, do you want to, I don't think you have a camera, but do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. Sorry, guys, I can't go ahead and do the video portion, but I can go ahead and do the voice portion. So it's a real pleasure to be joining on to the team right now, especially right now since milestones have been met and things are really making progress. Granted, it's taken quite some time, but there's going to be a lot more progress ahead for the entire organization as we go forward. The experience I bring to the table with the U.S. Forest Service has been very diverse, and just overall, the conservation and restoration process itself has really gotten me ready and prepared with them to be able to come here and bring what's necessary to the team. So I look really forward to working with everybody and seeing all the goals that we meet.
Thank you, Angelina. And just one last word in honor of Patriots Day last Saturday and the 13 service members that died in Afghanistan. I just want to state for the record, we do have one of our open space habitat techs, Francisco Gonzalez, still serving in Kuwait. He recently had to do a short tour into Iraq, which is still considered, war zone under the United States. And so he was able to earn his combat badge. He's very proud of that. He should rejoin us in January or February of next year. He should be coming back from there, but just keep him in your thoughts and prayers for a safe return. With that, that's all the announcements I have.
Thank you, Brian, and welcome Colin and Angelina to WHRCA. At this time, the next board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 18th at 11:30 a.m. And I just wish everyone a wonderful day. And remember, you belong to an organization that is a crown jewel when it comes to habitat. And have a great, great day.
Madam Chair, could I just add a note if I could?
Yes.
Sorry, it's Aaron Geddes. I noticed that we have that on the Zoom platform. I don't know, as far as that goes, I know the executive order N2920 is to expire October 1st, requiring everybody to be back in having our meetings in person pursuant to the Brown Act. I also know that the state is looking at the AB 361 to extend that during state emergencies, etc. I believe that has passed through the Senate, but I don't believe it's been signed yet by the governor. So at this point, just the caveat that November may be a Zoom, or November might be back in person. So,
Aaron, this is Chris Gray from WRCOG. We're closely tracking that because that affects all our other meetings as well.
I bet.
So we'll certainly make sure we comply with the state laws and requirements, and then obviously update everyone as once we know exactly what the requirements are, we'll make sure that we comply with that.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. I just want to make sure everybody knew we may be back in person. So.
All right, good to know. And just again, everyone stay happy and healthy and be kind. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.